All right, Inappropriate Earl and Earlverse listeners, we have a returning guest here who might be the most interesting guest I can ever hope to have on this forum of exposing my friends to my fans. A life that very few people have led. And we're just going to get right into it. Please welcome Erik Aude, author of 3 Years in Pakistan. And I don't even want to explain what the journey was. Erik, explain to us what 3 Years in Pakistan is about.
Hi, well, my name's Erik Aude. I had a little incident over the Middle East in Pakistan. I wrote my own book. It's called 3 Years in Pakistan. There are two documentaries about my life. One is called Locked Up Abroad, and one is called 3 Years in Pakistan, the Erik Aude story. I would never ever recommend anyone watch Locked Up Abroad, and the reason is Locked Up Abroad took a 13-hour rushed interview, crammed it into 48 minutes, and all they did was take all the exciting stuff, but they left all the heart, all the soul, all the information that would explain how I was able to handle what I was able to handle. I always say this: I would end up spending 3 years in jail in Pakistan for a crime I did not commit, 9.5 months of them on death row. But if anyone was meant to go to, if anyone was built to go to jail, it was me. And you can't tell all that in a 48-minute show. So unfortunately for me, Locked Up Abroad is very popular. It's in every country, in every language. Nat Geo is a very popular company, and so my episode alone was viewed over 1 billion times. And since I've done my documentary, way more. Anyone who took the time to watch Locked Up Abroad and contact me and hate on me and like tell me you didn't do this, you didn't do that, but took the time to watch my documentary, 3 Years in Pakistan, the Erik Aude story, they all did a 180. And that's why I needed to tell my documentary. When I got out of jail in December 23rd, 2004. I tried to write a book, but I wasted so much time with it because I didn't know how to write a book. I was, going through the avenues that I thought were necessary. I would go to a ghostwriter. I'd spend 3 and 4 months with that ghostwriter. That ghostwriter was trying to make a treatment, go to a publishing house and get an advance. They wanted like $250,000 to write my story, and no one was willing to give that kind of money. So the next thing you know, I'm wasting 3, 4 months of my life, and then they just disappear, lose interest. Then I go to another ghostwriter, same scenario, and that went on for years. And it wasn't until 2015, I'm back in the entertainment industry now. I've always been a stuntman. I've been a stuntman actor since I was a working stuntman actor since I was 12 years old. So I've been making money in this business for 32 years. I've been pursuing it a lot longer. But I was working on a movie with Craig Schaefer. I was doubling him. It was a skull movie, piece of shit movie. We were filming out in Utah on one of our off nights. Craig Schaefer was having dinner with me, and he knew who I was because of Locked Up Abroad. And then he started asking me all these questions. He goes, "Well, when's the book coming out?" And I tell him, "Well, I can't get anyone to write the book." And he was like, "You know what? You need to write the book." And I thank God I met that dude. That was the best thing, the best stunt job I ever had was meeting and working with Craig Schaefer, because he was the one who absolutely motivated me and pushed me to write my own story. And so with his motivation, he said, "Just write a chapter." And I'd write a chapter and email it to him. And he's like, "Keep going." And I just started writing my whole story linear from childhood on up to my experience in Pakistan. It took me 2 years to write it, but then once again, I didn't know how to edit it. So I would go and try to find editors, and they would once again want money or take money and disappear or not edit it the way I wanted it. So eventually I got tired of that, and I ended up editing it myself with the help of my friend who structured it. But it took me 2 years to write, 7 years to edit. And now it's available on Amazon. It's called 3 Years in Pakistan, also the name of the documentary, except it's way more in depth. Anyone who sees it says, "I already watched Locked Up Abroad. I've already watched 3 Years in Pakistan." Well, I'm telling you, that's just scratching the surface of everything. Now you would be able to understand how I was able to adapt to absolutely everything that I adjusted to in prison, and why prison wasn't nearly as hard for me as it should have been.
Well, I mean, because I've read a few chapters already, and the story reminds me of that movie from 1978, Midnight Express, which was, I believe, that was an American tourist gets he was smuggling hashish into, I think, Turkey, and
Yeah,
he
that was Billy Hayes. Yeah.
right. How close is the story to that in terms of what happened to you, and then do you and Billy Hayes have parallels in the story?
No, the only thing that we have, because I know Billy Hayes. I'm actually a buddy of his. We played poker, and when we were in Vegas together, I get him to come to charity tournaments. Billy Hayes is a lot smaller than me. He's half my size. Billy Hayes went to a country that actually liked Americans during a time when they liked America. Billy Hayes was also guilty, so he kind of got what he deserved. And so, sorry he had to go through all that, but he knew what he was doing. I was innocent. I went to a country right after 9/11 when everyone hated us. I was the only American in that country. I had to become a lawyer to get myself out, whereas he escaped. Uh, so the only comparison is you had two Americans in jail in foreign countries, but the stories are completely different.
I mean, I'd be petrified to be in prison for more than 2 minutes. Uh, initially, what's it like when you realize your fate of, you know, I'm sure it seemed at the time, man, I'm going to be here for a long time. How do you, is it like in movies where you kind of got to fight and prove that, hey, I'm a tough guy, no one's going to fuck with me, or is that just in the movies?
No, that's not just in the movies. Unfortunately, that's the scenario. Before I went to jail, I mean, I was arrested the day after Valentine's Day, 2002. So February 15, 2002, I was arrested the day after Valentine's Day, and the way I got arrested was a story all on its own. I was told I was going to be hung after 5 o'clock prayer that day, and I freaked out. They said I tried to escape. I wasn't trying to escape. I was simply trying to find a phone. I found a phone, but I was bulldozing dudes. I had to barricade myself in an office, an empty office at the airport. Um, DEA members came from the embassy. It was the only way I was willing to come out of the room. This is the guy told me they're going to hang me, so I was trying to get someone from the embassy to come see me. And DEA members came. DEA members are assholes. They figure if you got drugs on you that you're guilty. They don't give a shit if you're innocent. Their job is to try to find bigger fish. And so whether or not they believe me, they didn't believe me. They weren't helpful whatsoever. I would end up getting tortured for 3 days for information I didn't have. Electrocuted, drowned, the bottom of my feet beaten, waterboarded. Uh, and then when I was brought to the biggest prison in all of Pakistan, a prison meant to house only 1,800, but it was overcrowded, 6,000 prisoners there. I found out earlier that I was the only American in jail in the entire country. The only knowledge I knew of prison was from the show Oz, the HBO show Oz from the '90s. So here I'm thinking, if you go in weak, you're going to be somebody's bitch. And I'm bigger than everyone else. I was a gym rat. I was benching 420. I was a badass on the football field, and so I thought I was only going to be there a couple days max because in the back of my head I'm thinking, well, everyone back home knows that I was working for a company. They know I'm innocent. The embassy is going to help me. This is what I was thinking. So I went in hot. I went in like to open the fucking gate. I went in there to make a statement. And the way it works in jail in Pakistan is you have these guys named number darts. Number darts are prisoners that get extra rations for doing the guards' dirty work. So usually a dozen or so prisoners will be allowed into the prison at once. And that's my dog, by the way.
That's all good.
You've got two prisoners on one prisoner on one. They start slapping you and hitting you, and these guys are usually the bigger guys. And Pakistanis in general aren't that big, so they're looking for like money, watches, jackets, nice sandals, anything of value. Well, when I went into prison that day, I was the only one going in by myself, and there was about a dozen of these guys horseshoed around the door. Well, I just treated it like opening kickoff. I figured if I come in slow, I'm going to be surrounded. So I went right through them so I could turn it into one-on-one, two-on-ones. And I started using their beards against them, their shalwars kameez, their outfits against them. They got sandals. And so I went in hot. If I knew then what I knew now, though, I would have gone in a little nicer. I would have been like, Assalamu alaikum, kya hale, satike. I would have been like, let's get some tea. Let's wrap it up. Who wants to play some poker? But I didn't think I was going to be there that long. And also I thought, you know what, you got to go in tough or you're going to be someone's bitch. I would end up spending my first 5 days in jail in Kasori for getting in a fight up in the barracks. And I would, so everything went downhill quick. It wasn't until the embassy came, I think, after the first 2 weeks of me being in jail, because I had to go back to court to get the court system in Pakistan is a joke. Here you get bail, and you get bail kind of quickly. In Pakistan, not if you're a foreigner. Foreigners don't get an option of bail if they're in a narcotics-related case. They'll get bail if they're on other cases like passport violation. or even drinking, but not for narcotics. So if you're a foreigner and you're in there for a narcotics case, you're denied bail altogether. But Pakistanis in general, who are, they're that's their country, they won't even get the opportunity to get bail for sometimes up to 2 3 years, and by then you're already being punished. So bail in that country is an absolute joke. You if you want to screw somebody over, you go and you throw a Quran on their front lawn and say, oh, they threw a Quran on their front lawn, which is a blasphemy case, which is possible death. And if the mob doesn't kill you, or a guard's there to protect you doesn't kill you, you'll be in jail for years before you can finally get bail. And so you've been punished at that point. It's an absolute joke in the legal system in Pakistan. I would go to court like every 2 weeks, sometimes every month, sometimes several times a week. There was nothing, there was no set pattern. It was always all over the place. And it would be 11 and a half months before I was finally sentenced. And by that time, the judge, it's very corrupt. If you're guilty, you want to go to jail in Pakistan. The judge wanted $125,000 for my acquittal. They figured that I was a multi-millionaire because the newspapers were saying that I was the hero of the mummies. I had worked as a stuntman on the Scorpion King. So they truly thought I was Brendan Fraser. That did not go well with me because all the lawyers, all the prosecutors, everyone involved in this case thought they can get a huge payday off of my skin. And then they also, when they realized I didn't have that kind of money, the judge had worked out a case. He had worked out a deal with my lawyer and somehow the embassy. And by this time, the embassy's like, "Congrats, Erik, you're going to go home. You're going to pay the judge through your lawyer 60,000 rupees, which is roughly $1,000." And that's still a little bit high, but that's a lot better than $125,000. He's going to give you a 2-year prison sentence, and because you've already been here, so long, with some remissions and some bribes, you'll get out in about 4 months. All that sounds great, but the catch was they said I would have to plead guilty, and I refused to plead guilty for a crime I didn't commit. And even the embassy was like, "Erik, what do you care? It's Pakistan." And the embassy interpreter, this guy named Aude, he was like, "What's worth more to you, your pride or your freedom?" And that helped make my decision, because my pride was worth a hell of a lot more to me than my freedom. So full well knowing that I was facing a life or death sentence, I still refused to plead guilty for a crime I didn't commit. The judge threw the book at me, but not nearly as bad as I thought he would. He gave me 7 years for what I was charged with, and 7 years I was happy with. I would end up having to become a lawyer in jail while I was there, and I would work on several foreigners, other cases. I got a bunch of foreigners out while I was working on my own case, and I was able to convince the higher court that I was innocent. They believed I was innocent, so they gave me time served, and I would end up spending just under 3 years in jail in Pakistan. That's a very rushed version.
No, no, I mean, please take your time. And during this time you're there, like, what is your family doing? Is there anything that, like, did they even know where you were?
Yeah, I know that my mom, everyone knew where I was before I even got arrested, because this was a job I was working for. The job, everyone's like, "Well, why were you smuggling drugs in Pakistan?" I wasn't. I was working for a very good friend of mine, importing expensive leather goods around the world, getting paid for it. But the smoke screen was, we were bringing in such high quality fine leather, jackets, skirts, pants, pieces from $1,500 to $3,000 each. So we're bringing in like $25,000 to $30,000 worth of leather goods, and by claiming it as our own, we would beat the 55% import tax back into the U.S. So we got a free trip. We got $800 spending money. For me, the trip was the payment, but he would save 14, 16,000. We made $800. We got a free trip. That was the deal. Turned out too good to be true. I would be the one who found out the hard way what we were all being used to do, and that was unknowingly smuggle narcotics. And it happens all the time. I was a dupe, not a mule. Mules know they're being used to smuggle something illegal. Dupes have absolutely no knowledge, and there were a lot of dupes. I was just the guy who found out the hard way. And the guy who set me up, I won a $20 million civil suit against. I will never collect any of it, though. I am unable to ever find any assets in his name. His name is a very common name in the Armenian community. It's like a John Smith. So every time a collector or not a detective, but a private investigator would go and try to find any assets, they would see all assets everywhere in this name, and then none of it actually was the guy that I had the judgment against. I keep renewing it, and it goes up by 10% every year. So actually, by now, he owes me over 50 million. I'll still never collect unless he wins the lottery or has a bunch of Bitcoin that I don't know about. Regardless, he was never punished for what he did to me, but he was spent 4.5 years in jail because after I was arrested, he continued on with his drug smuggling operation. Except he had hired a Swedish woman who doing the same job I was doing, but she lost her luggage at JFK Airport. She continued on her itinerary to LAX, and they found in the walls of her suitcase, had nothing to do with the leather actually. If you emptied the suitcase, it was an empty suitcase. But built professionally in the walls of the suitcase was uh, opium, and it was so thin and light that you couldn't tell if you just swung the suitcase around. Well, they found opium in the walls of her suitcase. Her story matched mine and several others, so they deemed her a dupe and they released her back to her country in less than 2 weeks without being charged. So, at least by my being in jail, there was another innocent person out there who wasn't. There was some good in a sense. So he was denied bail, and he wasn't even the big fish. He was a middleman. He started squawking. He started telling on everyone, saying how his job is to recruit idiots like me to work for this company, and by keeping us in the dark, we don't draw suspicion to ourselves because we don't know we're being used to smuggle anything illegal. His information led to one of the biggest drug busts in Glendale history, and like 20 plus people got arrested because of his information. That's why he only got 4.5 years. That's why he also copped a deal that he would never be punished for what he did to me, because his information was worth way more than him being punished for what he did to me.
Now, when this happened to you, like I know, like in movies, they cover up the scent of drugs with coffee beans and stuff like that. Like, were there no drug sniffing dogs back in the day? Like when you bring all this leather into the country, like at least on the American.
Well, on my first trip to Turkey, on the way back to Sweden, there was the drug sniffing dog, and it pulled me out of the crowd. And earlier in the trip, there were cats all over our luggage, so I chalked it up to maybe it's smelling the cat. Like it wasn't. It didn't. It pulled out a few people, and they brought me into this big room with different customs guys. This was in Sweden, and there was a lot of people in this room being pulled out, having their stuff gone through, and they went through my stuff, and I told them I'm there to pick up the leather, so they like went through all the leather pieces and everything. And even at that point, I'm like, just be careful with it because that's what I'm here for. They never found anything, and then they let me on my way. I never had, but that was the only time I ever got pulled out. I wish they had found the drugs that time because it would have saved me a lot of pain, a lot of headache, a lot of heartache. If I had found out in Sweden rather than in Pakistan, I think so. Unfortunately for me, that was the only time there was a drug sniffing dog, and it did its job. But the people who were there in Sweden, they didn't think I was. They believed I wasn't a drug smuggler, and I guess because that was the whole point, because I didn't come off as one.
Well, I mean, I want people to go and go on Amazon, buy this book. I don't want to talk too much about the book because I want people to read it.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
so, and Eric's an amazing story, even without this happening. Just his acting journey, which we'll get into in a second, is unbelievable. I mean, I'm a big Craig Sheffer fan, so just the fact that you did a movie with him, he was like the go-to 80s bad boy. Um,
yeah, he's great. He's a good dude. He's in. I mean, I had to dedicate the book to him. I dedicated the book to. He's one of the people I dedicated it to, because if it wasn't for him lighting the fire under me and just like giving me the shove I needed, I don't think I would have written it.
what got you into acting? Because I see in 1997 your first role was you're a good-looking guy, if I may speak so frankly. The Bold and the Beautiful. I could see you as a soap star. Did you fall in? I mean, some people just fall into acting. How did
Yeah.
you?
Well, that's like my first job was in '92 on a movie called Across the Moon with Christina Applegate and Peter Berg. I was only 12 years old, but I wanted to be an act. I wanted to be a stuntman, not an actor. I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to be a stuntman. And since I was a kid, since I was like 5 years old, since I can remember, even older than that, I would ride my bike off the roof in preschool, and I'd throw myself downstairs, and I do stupid stuff like run backwards into parked cars when people were in it, so it looked like they hit me. Um, and I didn't know how to become a stuntman though. I finally found a place that did acting classes, like in Quartz Hill Park, off of the newspaper, and they were like $10 acting classes with this woman whose claim to fame was being an extra in the movie Teen Witch. Her name was Bonnie Jones, and it was me and two other girls in this class, and we would just sit in chairs and we would do like McDonald's slate, in the camera, and how to like do like weird commercials that they had, and just repetition. And I sucked. I was terrible. It's terrible when you first start as an actor. You think you're great, but you're not. You do too many nervous twitches and everything. You're too loud or you're just too robotic. You're not natural. So that was the kind of stuff I had to learn how to do. And I just wanted to get on set. So then I got hired to be like a yeah, to be I got hired to be a kid at a prison when I was 12. My first job, my first movie was going to a prison, and then I got working with Christina Applegate and Peter Berg, and I brought a Nerf football on set. I got 3 days there. I got my SAG. It was great. And then I would do other little things like my mom tried to start a casting company where we do extra work and we would help wrangle all the background up in the Antelope Valley, and we do lots of international commercials, TV shows. And then finally, I got an agent and I started auditioning and I started booking like Nickelodeon shows, kid shows, Power Rangers. I always played the bully, always because I had size on me. I was an athlete. I was a lot bigger than the average person, especially the kids. Like I looked like a damn grown man when I was 15 years old. And so I always, when they would get physical roles for me, like roles where I'm like bullying someone or get beat up, and they would bring a stunt person on set, I was adamant about doing my own stunts. Like my stunt double would sit over there in the chair. I was the lead of a wrestling show called On the Ropes, and my stunt double was Chris O'Hara. Chris O'Hara just stunt coordinated Fall Guy. He was
Oh,
my
okay.
he never got it, but that was my stunt double, and I did all my own stunts, So um, and then over time, as the roles started to roll in, and I would start booking, people started, net like shows started to get cheaper and cheaper. They were looking for ways how to save money, so they started looking for stuntmen who could act, and my name started coming up more and more and more. So the reason why I started working so much is because I knew how to deliver dialogue, and naturally. And my goal wasn't to be the best actor auditioning. My goal was just to be better than all the other stuntmen auditioning. And I had 10 years of classes. Bobby Chance, um, Meisner. No, I went to Jeff Goldblum acting workshop down there in Third Street Promenade for years, and that every Sunday I was somewhere doing acting classes and auditioning, and it helped me as a stuntman. If you're a stuntman and you've taken acting classes, you're going to get hired. It's just the way it is. And so you're going to be the guy that can deliver a couple lines, get hit, get tackled like this. In the last week, I just worked on Naked Gun, playing a prisoner that's escaping, the new one with Liam Neeson. And then I flew to LA to double Rob Riggle for a movie, which I have to. And then I flew back here to Georgia because I'm working on Thursday on a show called Found. I'm playing a character, delivering some dialogue, getting tackled. Then I immediately fly back to LA to continue the movie that I'm doing with Rob Riggle. And I come back to Atlanta to direct an industrial for a friend of mine where I get to direct some friends that I'm hiring. And then I once again go back to LA to finish the movie with Rob Riggle. And then I will be going to New Orleans to start stunt coordinating and second unit directing a horror movie for a couple weeks. I mean, it's great because I wear a lot of hats and I love being on set. Every day I'm on set, I feel like a kid. And I'm also doing a book signing on the 25th in Newnan. I just did a book signing in Lancaster on a Saturday, and I'm promoting my book. I'm remodeling a house right now. I'm taking care of a lot of shelter dogs, and I'm filling in where I can. I'm just a sandbag.
Is there anything you don't do?
I mean, I play poker for a living still. I still do that. I got married, by the way. I don't know if you know, I got married last year. Yeah.
Jesus Christ! Like I feel lazy interviewing you.
I just, I'm very. I mean, I don't know. I think honestly, all the bad stuff that's ever happened to me in my life is what kind of forces me to keep moving. Because if I stay still too long, then maybe thoughts will get the better of me. So I have to keep myself occupied. So I have to do as many things as I can.
Well, no, I mean, I think the only stuntman that I can recall ever really following because he could act was Dar Robinson, who I think he held the record for the world's biggest free fall in that Burt Reynolds movie, Sharky's Machine, where I think it was he like 40 stories up in the air. He used no shoot, no nothing. And then Burt Reynolds just made him the bad guy in his next film because he could act. So, but some of those Burt Reynolds movies were a little rough in the 80s. But
Sure, well, 80s and 70s. The guy that I'm directing on this industrial I'm doing next week, his name's Charlie Pacherny. He used to double Burt Reynolds quite a bit. Um, and he stunt coordinated the first two Die Hards, Ghost, Demolition Man.
oh,
I know.
now you're talking my language.
And now I get to direct him. I'm stoked because I'm a big fan of his, and I'm also a good friend of his. So for me, I'm like a little kid working with a legend that I very much respect.
And you're also, I think you're one of the few actors who've been on both Sons of Anarchy and the Mayans. And
There's
since
a few of us, but yeah, I mean, there's a few people. There's a lot of people because the Mayans did a crossover with Sons. So Sons, we had Mayans or Sons on Mayans all the time. I worked on every season of Mayans, but I also worked on the last season of Sons.
So I remember I was watching, I think it was season one of the Mayans where there's a shootout in an Indian casino, and you were like the
I
security.
got shot. That was season two. I got shot. I got shot and killed. I wasn't supposed to, but the stunt coordinator was pissed at me for being friends with Elgin James, who's the creator of the show Mayans. And Elgin, like during a walkthrough, because my character, that was my third episode playing that character, but I was also doubling at the time Gilly, so I had to work on every episode season one and a few, and several episodes since. But I only got shot that night because the stunt coordinator saw the executive producer come over during a walkthrough rehearsal, give me a hug. It was pretty messed up for him to do that. Like even everyone's like, "Why are you killing Erik?" And the executive producer had gone home. He didn't know this is going on, but they're like, "Why are you killing Erik?" And the stunt coordinator was this dude. He ended up getting fired at that season because he wasn't just doing stuff like that with me. He tried to fire the JD's stunt guy who JD was, played easy. He was the lead of the whole series, but he tried to replace him, and JD didn't like that because JD has his own personal stunt guy who's great. And then that guy became the stunt coordinator for the rest of the time because that dude who was doing stunt coordinating for season two was power tripping on everyone. It was messed up. Regardless, yeah, you saw it. Although if he didn't do that, it would have been on more episodes as that character.
I mean,
That's Hollywood.
I know. Listen, I could write 3 books on the bullshit I've had to go through, but this is about you, not me. On a show like Sons or the Mayans, where there's a lot of motorcycle scenes and chases and wipeouts, you can actually ride a motorcycle, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's why I got the job. Mayans at the time was the most expensive pilot after Lost. Lost was 18 million originally, but then Mayans ended up being 24 million. And the reason is because they had to film the pilot twice. And the reason is because it's a motorcycle club. We would have all these doubles, all these guys and just regular guys who they wanted to make look like badasses, or were doubling the actual actors who were tatted up with tattoos everywhere. The guy I was doubling, Gilly, it would take me 3.5 hours for them to put all the tattooed sleeves up on my hands, on my neck, and everything. And then they were doing this with like 39 other guys. Well, they would get up to like 240th Street East Lancaster when base camp was down in Santa Clarita. So, and they would be at 10.5 hours before they'd even shot one scene because of all this, the preparation and everything, and then the shuttling and the tattoos and so many people. And then they get up at like 240th, and you're supposed to have 40 dudes riding down the road at 80 miles an hour in formation. And that's when you would quickly find out that there was a lot of pretenders, guys who shouldn't be riding. Sorry if you're hearing my dogs. Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me.
No, it's all good. So yes, I mean, for those of you wondering, I always thought, wow, the actors are really riding these motorcycles, and then I thought, the insurance is probably a little much for that. So, uh, you need people like Erik. But the crazy thing is, like Erik was saying, they have to look like, the actors. So they have to fake tattoo. No, I was just talking to myself because it is interesting when you see certain motorcycle scenes, and you can tell they're not really focusing on the face just to kind of cover it up. It's not actually JD or Frankie. but they've got the same tattoos. And I thought, man, even if those are not fake, I don't want to say fake tattoos, but I guess they're fake tattoos. Uh, that's got to take a couple hours to do. So,
Oh, it took forever, and they're doing it with everyone. So that's why when they found out that these, like, they fired the first two stunt coordinators for the pilot, and it was the third stunt coordinator who called me up. It was Eric Norris. That's Chuck Norris's kid. His exact words. First thing he does when he called me was, "Hey, this is Eric Norris." And I go, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Tell me." He goes, "Don't bullshit me. Can you ride?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Where'd you train?" I said, 405 101. And so he's like, "All right, when are you available?" And I was at the time I was directing a music video in Chicago, so I said I could be there this Friday. He's like, "All right, you're working Friday." I come down there Friday. The very first scene they put me in, it was there's a big brawl at a dog kennel shop, and a car is going to come in and just see that the mines are there, and then do a 180 and take off. I see the rocks in the ground, and I tell these other dudes, I said, well, first I asked, I said, "Can I ride the motorcycle?" Because it's a brand new Harley, the newest one. And motorcycles are like horses. They got different personalities. They're not all the same. They're not universal in one way or another. They're like, "Nope." And I'm like thinking, okay, sink or swim. I tell these other three guys who are going to be in the scene with me that, hey, might want to stay back a little bit when this guy does the 180. They're like, "I think we're okay, Dad. We got it." Car comes up, does a 180, peppers everyone with rocks. Everyone goes down. I'm in the back, and I'm like, beep, beep. And I just kind of go on. And then after that, I had a permanent job. I was their guy on mine. I was one of them. And yeah, I'm on basically every episode of Mayans, and also the intros from season 2 on. I'm at the beginning of every single one of them.
Let me ask you this, and this is almost like pro wrestling. I almost don't want the answer, but like when they show a close up of, say, any of the main actors, Charlie Hunnam, JD, and it looks like they're actually riding because you can see it's them. Are they on a truck and they just don't show
No,
past?
well, no. The actors all learned how to ride, and so season 1, I mean, they were all spilling the bikes. I watched a few of them spill bikes. Season 1, they were green. They held, gone to. They even made them go to motorcycle class together. I think the only real rider on the show was Frankie. Frankie was the only real rider. But everyone got good. Everyone did drop their bikes, but no. When we towards the end, they were seasoned riders.
I mean, I would imagine the budget. Like, I'll assume the average cost of those bikes used on the show, since they are legit Harleys, were what, 10 grand a bike? Like,
No, you're underselling. Holy shit, dude! Like 30 to 50.
really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
And I got to ride and test every single one of them. Ah, it's beautiful.
were there guys who? I mean, I once did an ice hockey commercial where I might have lied and said I was a little better of a skater than I was. I think I said I played in the NHL when I clearly hadn't. And they and I was the star of the commercial, so they were in too deep. They had to use me, so they worked around my let's just say my non NHL skating. Um, were there guys who said, "Oh yeah, I'm a rider. I've trained with I don't know, Bob Hurricane Hanna." They show up to set and they can't even start the bike. And I mean, do they just
Yeah.
get fired
Oh
on
yeah,
the spot?
that's why the pilot was so expensive. They had to film the pilot twice because we get up to, or they get up to, like 240th Street East Lancaster, which is an hour and a half from Santa Clarita, and they'd be at 10 and a half hours already before they filmed anything. And you got these guys in formation, and all of a sudden you started realizing these dudes can't ride in formation. Like, people who are weekend warriors are not riders, and when they got to ride in a pact behind someone, it's intimidating to new riders. So they had to fire the first two stunt coordinators. They had to come back and all the guys who were dropping bikes or not able to ride or stalling out were like in the back of the truck. I would see that. I would see that all the time. I watched some of the actors drop their bikes. I would have to ride with them and yell at them to like shift down because we're about to hit a nice turn. The guy Gilly I was doubling, he didn't live in LA. He lived in Utah. So I was actually the only. I got used a lot because, especially the first season, and so I was riding with the real guys like Richard Cabral and Angel and JD and all of them in the packs, and so I'm riding with the actual actors. But here I hear them in a really high gear or in too low a gear, and I'm like telling them to shift up, shift down, and I was basically having to quarterback them as I was riding information with them as we would keep resetting out in the middle of nowhere. That was season 1 that we had most of the problems. After that, it got a lot better because we started to filter out who could and who couldn't ride.
And the fight scenes were pretty realistic in both Suns and the Mayans. Did you ever have any close calls, like someone actually hitting you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So in the first episode of Mayans, there's a chase where JD, because he's not the prospect. We had to chase the car. It was also a continuation from the dogfighting area when we saw the guy do the 180. Except we went out to Lake LA to film these scenes, and that's like on 150th. But we were filming in the neighborhood there, and so like four of us are like just zipping around corners. But they put cameras on different corners, and we also had a camera vehicle following us because they wanted the speed, they wanted us in formation and doing skids around corners and everything else. So we're chasing this car. We all come around the corner. I'm on the left. Jad Guerrero, who's doubling JD's on the right. We had Matt Baker and Dave Castillo. These guys, Dave Castillo and Matt Baker, are great riders. JD at the time wasn't the best rider. He would become a great rider, but he wasn't at the time. Now, the newer motorcycles have something called ABS, which if they think that you're like stalling out, it goes to shut off as a safety mechanism. So as we're going left, all of a sudden, I see him starting to stall out, and I can't go. I see him starting to stall out. I'm on his right. I'm on his right. He's on my left, and we got to turn left. But because he's stalling out, I'm about to hit him. And if I hit him, that's bad. I can't go straight because there's walls there, and I can't stop because a camera vehicle is behind me with the arm, and that camera vehicle is being driven by Holiday, who just got the record for the most barrel rolls on Fall Guy. So all I do is hit my back brake, spin 180, and duck my head as I go under the camera arm, and I swap spots with Richard or JD's double, Chad Guerrera, and we keep going. And everyone was like, "Hey man, did you guys plan that?" I'm like, "That shit was survival right there."
Uh,
That was the closest call that I had. Had I gone straight, I would have hit a wall. If I kept going left, he would have hit me. And then had I stopped, I would have gotten hit by the camera arm. So I had to keep going. I had to just take a different trajectory.
well, what was
But
more?
that's like being on the freeway on the 405 when people in the middle of the night are texting and lane changing. They never see us.
Oh, I don't know how people. I have respect for anyone who rides a motorcycle on the 405, the 101, the 10, the 110 interchange at high tide. Like,
I've had 3 hit and runs on me, and they were all in the same year. And I've had a million near misses, but now that I ride knowing that everyone around me is an idiot, I just assume no one sees me because they don't. So I'm always using that horn, and I drive very offensively, not defensively. I've had so many, like my right foot is just above the brake. You don't ever want to hit the front brake because then you'll go over. You always want to have your right brake, and so you'll do a slide on the back foot.
what was more dangerous, stunt work on the Mayans or working on the Andy Dick show? Because I've had a few run-ins with Andy Dick. He depends.
The Eddie show, an MTV show at the time. It was the last show I did right before I went to Pakistan. I was working the very day before I went to Pakistan, and they had a sign. They had to sign like a paperwork that we're okay if Andy Dick gets out of line, that we won't sue. They had to sign something saying we won't sue the Andy Dick show ahead of time, like because apparently he's like really inappropriate on set, and he didn't do anything to me on that set. But I've had to throw Andy Dick out of a couple clubs I was a bouncer at back when I was running doors in Hollywood. We'd throw him out all the time.
Yeah, I mean, one time at the Comedy Store, he just walks up to me and like grabs my dick. I'm like, "What are you doing, bro?"
Yeah, he's done that. He's done that to me.
Yeah,
We'd
but
have to throw him out of the club all the time. He'd do that to dudes. He just walk up to dudes and start grabbing their dick and nipples. And then next thing you know, he's getting beat up. He's like he can take a beat. Andy Dick can take a beat when he's drunk. And then he never wants to leave, so you have to like drag him out of the club and throw him out.
what clubs did you bounce at?
I used to work for Ivar over there on Ivar and Hollywood Boulevard, but then I got picked up by promotion teams because there was more. So I worked for promotion teams called King of Things and Go Group. I was the only white guy on staff, so my job was to filter the crowd, and those crowds were pretty rough. If I didn't get in 4 fights a night, it was a slow night. So my job was to make sure that everyone was in dress code. If you had ugly people in the crowd, I'd get them out. People who had baggy pants or sneakers or t-shirts on, they didn't get in. I'd tell them, hey, go home, think eighth grade prom, come back with a button-up shirt, some nice shoes, I'll let you ride in. But if you came looking for a fight, you found one. And that's where the money was. It was the worst. So we'd go from club to club to club. I'd go Ivar, Bass, Cinespace, Bass before they burned down. Day after, Sunset Beach. I do the after hours at Vine from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And then sometimes I go pick up some shifts at White Lotus across the street. But I went where the money was, and I was, that's the rougher the night, the more money you made.
Well, I mean, Erik, your story is really fascinating, and please, everyone, go on Amazon. Is Amazon the best place to
Well,
get?
that's the only place I have it on. I have it in hard copy, paperback, ebook now. And if you eventually, once I get back from New Orleans, stunt directing this movie, I'm gonna do an audio book. It's going to take me about 100 hours, I was told, to record it and edit it, and it'll end up being a 23.5 hour book. But that's the next thing in the line. And it's my life story. Look, it's the only way I know how to write is to write in linear. So I had to tell my story from a kid. I had a very terrible childhood. Wasn't the best. I'm the youngest of 6 boys, but I'm the only one to grow up with my mother because she was pretty hard to deal with. And I was run over by a school bus when I was 8 years old. I was told I'd never walk again. I've had 54 surgeries to date. 52 of them were between 8 and 15 years old. I'm the first person on earth to have their urethra severed and reconnected. Told I never walk again. I ended up becoming an amazing football player. I have a record that at the time I was told is a California record, and I've since learned it's actually it's a national record. There is no linemen in the nation with better stats than me. I had 147 tackles for a defensive end. Maybe a linebacker might have those, maybe a strong safety, but a lineman, unheard of. There were video game stats. That's in my book. So I would, like I said, if anyone was built for jail, it was me. I went in as basically a blitzing defensive end, and I would end up becoming a lawyer in jail. I would wrote a lot. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of languages. I became a teacher. And the first year of prison was terrible, but the second 2 years, honestly, not that bad. Midnight Express, it sounds like it was a terrible situation. I'll tell you right now, though, I had fun in jail. I had a good time in jail. I had respect in jail. I met a lot of cool people in jail. The future prime minister, the future president. I was best friends with the Palestinian hijacker.
Hello.
I,
I mean, let me ask you this as a fun question: can you get laid in prison by a woman?
it explains my whole life. It talks about everything. It talks about obviously Pakistan, and it briefly tells about where I am today. And everyone that's taken the time to read the book seems to really appreciate it. And I'm not a writer, but I know how to tell a story.
Well, I disagree with you. I mean, just a couple chapters in, I'm already drawn in. Like, I want to finish this. Um, let's end on a fun note here. There's not a lot of women in prison.
Well, that's not true. Hold on, hold on. Let me let my dog out. My dog's getting anxious. Come on, go, go.
And Erik takes care of her dog.
My dog's getting anxious. I have 9 dogs.
No. I mean, well, let's end on a fun note. Like, if I'm in prison, and I don't plan on being in prison anytime soon, my first thought is there's got to be a woman around here somewhere. I'm assuming that is maybe the number one, number one thing you would ask a guard for. Like, hey, man, what do I need to get laid by a woman in here? Is that possible?
Yes, but it's not willing. And the guard would supply you with a girl from the women's prison to rape.
Okay, then never mind. Here, I thought we'd end on a good note. Well,
It's 10,000 rupees too. That's less than $200.
Well, geez, I don't want to end the interview on that.
Sorry, that's probably
No,
not what you
no,
want.
I ask and you tell. I'm trying to think. Like,
Fun things in jail, like the things I would get. See, I became like Red in Shawshank Redemption. If you needed a cell phone, you came to me. If you wanted a VCD or VCD player, and books and food and smoothies and ice, you came to me. I didn't deal with drugs, alcohol, weapons, or women. I just dealt with things to help your mind. By the time I left prison, I had a PlayStation 2 in my cell. I had a computer. I was writing like play scripts. I had my room was the library. I had like 300 plus books in my room. And I organized a soccer match against the guards. I won a boxing tournament there in prison. It was fun. I mean, we would have poker tournaments all the time. I was running poker tournaments in jail. The guards would play. Hundreds of prisoners would play, and I was the guy running it all. So if you came to jail in Pakistan after my first year there, you would see me probably suntanning and working in the garden with a big smile, and you'd be like, "This doesn't feel like prison." And it's because by the time I left, all the guards were working for me. So there was nothing really to worry about because all the guards were making money, and their whole goal is to make money. So they didn't have to beat it out of anyone anymore because they were happy because they were making a lot of good money, and not even the bad kind, because I didn't deal with alcohol, weapons, or women or drugs. I just dealt with stuff to make life a little easier in there.
Well, with the soccer game, was it like the longest yard where you had to go up the soccer game against the guards, like in the longest yard, Burt Reynolds?
I not quite that aggressive, but man, I'll tell you right now, the goal. Like I was always the one who had to play goalie because I was the only one with the balls to stand in front of the soccer ball coming there. Because prisoners just want to play soccer, but they're not good soccer players. But then you got some ringers in there who are just great, and like these guys would just. And the soccer ball comes at you a million miles an hour. I'm just like taking it to the face and everything else, whereas everyone else is like trying to jump out of the way and not get stung in the back. If I wasn't our goalie, we'd lose by like 30. But if I was our goalie, we'd only lose by like 11.
But did like the prisoners go, "Hey, this is our shot to give a guard a little elbow," or
No, it didn't happen like that. I mean, there would be riots sometimes when a lot of animosity was out there. But other than that, like the guards, if they would be your like as long as you paid them, they'd be your friends. They would
right?
eat lunch with us, breakfast with us, dinner with us. So if you were cordial with the guards, and if you're lucky, you were friends with them. They were cool to you. Where we would play, we're like the more VIP prison area, 3 cell, 2 cell, where that's where the political prisoners were. They couldn't do these games in the barracks because it was too chaotic there. The guards there had to be a lot tougher. But on death row and in B class and A class, that's where like the richer prisoners would be. Those guards were all taken care of. They were good. They would like come in and like light the politicians' cigarettes. They would smuggle in everything for them. So they were nice. And the guards that played poker with us and played soccer with us were like they were friends. They would see all the stuff, all the contraband around the room, but we were taking care of them so much they didn't care.
Well, how do you come up with money in prison? Like, what? I mean, how do you take care? I mean, like,
Well, at first, the way I got my money was through the embassy, but at the beginning, before I could learn the language, the guards were assholes. They were my enemies because they figured I couldn't tell on them, and so they would come in my room in the middle of the night and beat on me and try to look for money. They got it out of me a couple times, but most of the time I had to fight them off. Once they realized I learned my biggest weapon in jail was learning the language, and
what?
it helped me quite a bit. So once the guards realized I could understand them and I could tell them and I could read their name tags, they started to really step off because they can get in a lot of trouble now. But not only that, they started to see me as a human being. And then I also started to see them as human beings. And I was like, look, you guys are trying to make money, right? That's it, right? You need money. Okay, well, I'll give you 100 rupees. That's less than $2 for me. Go get me some fruit. These guys would leave their post, go outside, and bring me back a huge bag of fruit. And I was like giving them 100 rupees for their effort. They would give me the fruit and just be happy with the change of the 100 rupees. And next thing I know, these guys, instead of like fighting me, they all became my friends. And like guards are telling each other, like, hey man, if you need anything, let me know. Like they were for sale, 100%. The guards, in order to work in that prison, they had to pay 15,000 rupees a month to the chief checker just for the opportunity to work inside the prison. Now the government's only paying them 6,000 rupees a month. That's $100. So they're having to pay $250 on a job that they're only making $100 on. So they're starting 150 in the hole just for the opportunity to work inside the prison. Now, the reason they want to do that, though, is because that's where the money is. They're beating it out of you. They're extorting it out of you, or they're working for you. So when I went in there, like I said, the newspaper said I was the hero of the mummies. They thought I was a multi-millionaire. So I'm like, well, shit, man, it's payday. And these guys are coming at me, and I'm fighting these assholes in the middle of the night, and it was hell. But once I started to understand the language, uh, that I was able to start telling these, and I'm telling all these guys, I got 7 guards fired, and then not only that, the ones that didn't get fired started realizing, like, hey, wait a minute, it's a lot easier to just be cool with this guy, and you'll make a lot more money, and it's not even that bad. So the guards started like getting everything from me. Like at first, it started with food and snacks and books and VCDs, and then finally, I was like, I want to get a cell phone. And the one guard was like, "What?" And I was like, "You get me a cell phone, I'll give you 1,000 rupees." And this dude's like, ears perked up. He's like, "Hmm." And so next thing I know, I'm getting a cell phone, and then I would make sure that this would work. And then I had other prisoners buying cell phones, and it's all in my book. It's all in my book. This is all my book on how I started to navigate the system and really adjust to jail. I mean, in a sink or swim situation, I was jet skiing, and when I left prison, honestly, I missed it. I had respect. I had friends. Um, I had made a good life for myself while I was there.
Well, please, everyone, go to Amazon right now. Go to book signings. Did you say you were doing a book signing in LA again or no?
Uh, my buddy Sean Kanan wants to get me one going at the Grove. That'll probably be later on this year. But in the meantime, my next book signing will be in Noonan, Georgia. That I live in Georgia now, and I just go back and forth for work. But if they go on Amazon, type in 3 years in Pakistan, and my book will come up. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. You can read that. It's free download. Otherwise, it's $10 to download the ebook. It's $22 for the paperback, and it's $28 for the hard copy. And then later on this year, hoping by July, August, I'll have the audiobook out.
And last thing, because I know you've got 9 dogs. I mean, you even take care of dogs, man. Like, if I were a girl, I would marry you.
Well, my dogs take care of me. I volunteered at a shelter. I was there today. I volunteered at a shelter, and I say I have 9 dogs here. I had 10 recently, but I had to put one down because she had a really bad heart murmur. It's tough. But I have 9 dogs, but I really have 80 dogs because I go to the shelter, I give them snacks, I walk them, I spend time with them, and it's very therapeutic. If you're having a bad day, go to your local shelter, spend time with the animals. I've never had a bad day at the shelter. Those dogs are so appreciative to get your time. They love the attention. They're scared. They're isolated, and so any kind of interaction is beneficial for them, but it's very beneficial for you as well. The dogs keep my mind occupied in a good way.
Oh, for sure. I do a lot of work with the LaBelle Foundation, who they always they know I like the handicap dogs, so I just fostered a blind this French bulldog that was basically tortured by someone, and they took out their eye.
I love hearing that you're doing that, but I hate that people are doing that, man. My wife and I, we get we get the elderly dogs, we get the dogs that have issues. Um, we got a dog that had a big tumor on her side and her gut, and then we get like very old poodles, and so we had a dog that was thrown out of a moving truck, first shattered the hip, and the same thing, another moving truck from another dog, and one dog was a bait dog, so they knocked all his teeth out to make him easier to get the confidence up of the other fighting dogs. It's really sad what people do to animals, and these animals still are so forgiving and loving.
Oh,
It's amazing. I don't know how people can do that to the dogs.
I'm yeah. I mean, it's just for every person out there like you and me, there's one that tortures. Yeah, I don't know. Let's not end it on torture. One last question. Let's try and end on the note of not animal torture or forced sexual interactions in prison. Uh, I mean, to me, there hasn't been a movie like Midnight Express in 40 years. Could 3 years in Pakistan? I could see it as a movie, like even a Netflix, either documentary or movie. Can you say if you've had any discussions along those lines?
Well, yeah, well, originally I wrote the script for it, and I wrote the script while I was in jail, and the script's good still, but I went to so many meetings when I got out, and one of the only person that was interested in it was Robert Chartoff. Robert Chartoff was the executive or produced the Rockies and the Right Stuff. He loved it and he wanted to make it, but he ended up dying in I think 2007. And when the rights came back to me, I would go to all these meetings and everything. And unfortunately, I was literally told if I was a gay black trans woman, then maybe the movie would get made. But no one wanted to see a white man go over to the Middle East and be the savior. And I'm like, that's not the story at all. That's really not it. Because people, unfortunately, when they hear my story, they do compare it to Midnight Express, and it's not a Midnight Express. Midnight Express is the kind of movie, even though it won Oscars, it's the kind of movie if you watch once, you don't ever want to watch it again because it's so uncomfortable. Um, my movie is a less sad version of Shawshank Redemption. I think my movie's a rock and roll version because I went in there thinking I was only going to be there a couple days. I went in there knowing I was innocent. I didn't act like a prisoner. Um, I was built for jail, and I never changed. Everyone there changed. All I did was figure out every way to adapt to the situation. I was, my story is when I went into that prison, I went in swinging. But when I left that prison, everyone was praying for me to go home. I'd won everyone over, and they didn't like that. I don't know why they didn't like that. And it was, you know, I don't know. Locked Up Abroad did my episode. I didn't want to be on Locked Up Abroad, but they kept coming back to me every year. And finally, they were like, "What if we let you play yourself?" I was like, "Ah." So they got my ego. I wanted to act and do my own stunts, and I did. I played my own self in my own episode, and I got a lot of flack for it. And because of that, I had to end up producing and making my own documentary, which was a lot better, is a lot better. And finally, I had to write my own book. And honestly, I think deep down, one day I will have to end up just producing and making my own movie.
Well, maybe Craig Sheffer can get back in the game, and you know, he deserves to be. I mean, what a career that guy had, and I'm sure he directs and writes and whatnot. But let's get him back in front of a camera. Erik, where can people find you on social media?
And you can find me on Instagram. You just follow me. My name, Erik, Erikaude. If you want a signed book, it's paperbacks $30. Uh, hard copies 40 because of the shipping and packaging. And Earl, when you read my book, I hope, yeah, see, there, I'll sign it. If you read my book, I'm curious as to how you end up thinking, man. I hope you enjoy it and leave a nice review on Amazon because those
Oh,
things
100%.
actually matter.
Yeah, buy the book. I mean, there's so much shit on Amazon. You don't need how-to books or Maria Kondo. She got enough money. Help Erik. Like it's an amazing story, and let's get this into a movie. And
All my money goes to the dogs, anyways. I promise you, I'm taking care of all the dogs with the money. So if you buy my book, it's not going to me; it's going to the dogs.
the guy takes care of dogs, man. Like Erik is an actual nice guy in Hollywood. Please, I mean, the guy works with Rob Riggle. I mean, I know Rob. That's no easy task. And I'm just kidding. Rob's a great guy. Please tell him I said hello.
He
And
knows you. I'll be seeing him this Friday. I'll tell him.
my ex-girlfriend was his assistant for 5 years, so
All right.
he was nice enough to do my podcast, and we shared our great love of wrestling, pro wrestling. So he was
Nice.
always very good to me. So Erik, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. I really appreciate you bringing me on to talk about the story, man. And I hope you end up really enjoying the book. Like I said, it took me 2 years to write it, 7 years to edit it, so I didn't half-ass it. It's my life, good, bad, humiliating. The fun times, the bad times. It's all there, man. So
And it's a thick book. I mean, this is not like something like you said. You can feel just touching this book the labor of love that it was. A lot of I bought the my favorite pro wrestler is Sting, and I bought his book. And nothing against them, but there's a lot of pictures in the book. I'll just say that, a lot of pictures.
I worked with Sting on a kids show called The Nightmare Room back in 2000. Nice dude. It was great working with him. Yeah, it's a good dude.
No, he's my favorite, but like that book, I don't know if I'd say it was a labor of love. It was just like, give me the money and here's 40 pictures, guys. You could have a truck through the sentences. There was so much space. But
I had to edit a lot of stories out that really weren't important to the story in general, but a lot stayed in there, and I'm pretty proud of it. Actually, I'm proud of my book.
I mean, you should be. It's no one else has this story, so thank you, Eric. I hope to see you when you are back in LA at some point.
Yeah, man, let's link up for sure.
And people, please buy the book. I don't ask you guys to buy my stuff. You know, I just ask you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe, go to Eric's page, like his pictures and whatnot. It's all about the algorithm, and buy the book. It's a bargain for what he put into this book. What he's charging should be twice as much. So please do it as a favor to me, and you'll be glad you did. Eric, I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Thank you, man. You take care, buddy.
You too.